In 1959, the Arizona desert was like a giant furnace. The scorching sun beat down on the small town of Cactus Springs along Route 66, transforming the old asphalt road into a shimmering, illusory river. Hot winds carried dust and sand, lashing against the single-story wooden houses with their rusty tin roofs. In the small hat workshop hidden behind old Mr. Higgins's general store, Samuel Whitaker, everyone called him Sam, was hunched over his workbench. Sam, 42, was thin but broad-shouldered from years of manual labor. His face was tanned, his beard sparse, and his deep brown eyes always held a hint of melancholy. Before him were handmade sheepskin hats, wide brims just enough to shield from the desert sun, lined with soft goatskin to absorb sweat, and adorned with intricately hand-carved eagle or wild horse emblems. Each hat took dozens of hours to complete. Sam selects wool from the best farms in Texas, dyeing it with natural herbs for warm colors, earth brown, ash gray, brick red, that won't fade in the sun. They're not just hats, Sam whispered to himself, his fingers tracing the brim. They're a story, the story of a man who stood firm against the storm. But Sam's story was shrinking. 2 years ago, he moved his wife Eleanor and 2 children from Texas to Arizona because Eleanor's asthma worsened in the humid climate. He opened Whitaker Hats, hoping to bring his family's traditional craft to the Wild West. Initially, a few curious tourists bought some. But then, mass-produced, machine-made hats from Sears Roebuck, costing only half the price, took over the market. Local customers, farmers, truck drivers, policemen chose convenience over quality. Sam looked out the window. The hats hung along the wooden wall like dangling corpses. Thick dust covered them. This month's revenue only covered half the rent. Eleanor, a 38-year-old woman with brown hair tied up in a bun and a gentle smile, despite her tired eyes, stood on the back porch doing laundry. She wore a pale floral cotton dress, her feet bare on the hot wooden floor. "Sam, lunchtime," Eleanor called, her voice hoarse from asthma. "I made ham sandwiches and coffee." Sam wiped his hands on his leather apron and went out. Tommy, his tall 16-year-old son, was helping his 8-year-old sister Lucy paint on the porch. Tommy dreamed of going to university to study design, but the tuition was a distant dream. "Dad, did we have any customers today?" Tommy asked, his voice a mixture of hope and worry. Sam shook his head and sat down at the table. "Just 2 tourists who asked about the price and left. They said our hats were too expensive." Eleanor placed her hand on her husband's shoulder. "We'll get through this. Like we did in Texas. Remember when Grandpa taught you how to make your first hat?" Sam smiled sadly. He remembered those afternoons by the fireplace, the white wool swirling in the breeze. But now debt was piling up. Doctor's bills for Eleanor, car repairs, Tommy's tuition. Last night, he lay awake, thinking about closing the workshop, becoming a mechanic or a street vendor. The sweltering afternoon dragged on. Sam sat on the porch smoking a hand-rolled cigarette, watching the trucks whiz by on Route 66. Each truck was a reminder. The world was moving, and he was being left behind. Eleanor hugged him from behind. "Sam, kindness and quality will find their way. Just be patient a little longer." Sam nodded, but deep down he felt his handmade hats being swallowed by the desert, like so many other lonely craftsmen's dreams. The old green Ford station wagon rumbled along Route 66, kicking up clouds of red dust behind it. John Wayne, the Duke, sat behind the wheel, a tall, broad-shouldered man at 1.93 meters, with a deep, resonant voice. At 52, he still exuded a powerful masculinity, his brown hair streaked with gray, wearing a blue plaid shirt, faded jeans, and worn leather boots. His familiar frayed Stetson hat rested on the passenger seat. Duke was traveling from Tucson to Los Angeles for his new film. Following the success of Rio Bravo, he preferred driving alone, contemplating the script, life, and the roles he loved, the silent hero, the man of the desert, and loyalty. Suddenly, the engine stalled. The fuel gauge showed 0. "Damn," Duke muttered, chuckling. He pulled over to the side of the road just a few miles from Cactus Springs. A walk in the sun was unavoidable. He entered the small town, sweating profusely. Sam's hat shop was the first to appear, with its hand-carved wooden sign that read, "Whitaker Hats, handmade since 1945. Duke pushed open the door, the bell jingling. Sam looked up from his workbench, his eyes wide. Before him stood John Wayne, the silver screen icon, the man admired by all of America. "Hello, sir. What can I do for you?" "Gas," Duke said, his deep, warm voice echoing in the small workshop. "My car ran out half a mile from here. Can you help me?" Sam quickly stood up, wiping his hands. "Yes, I have a spare can. I'll get it right away." While waiting, Duke wandered over the hats. He picked up a gray sheepskin hat with a slightly curved brim and an embossed eagle emblem. His rough fingers stroked the soft fur. "Good quality," Duke complimented. "Not cheap. Did you make it?" Sam nodded, a mixture of pride and embarrassment on his face. "Yes, Mr. Wayne. I make them one by one. Texas sheepskin, Arizona goatskin lining, wide brim for desert sun protection, but not heavy." Duke listened attentively, asking about the process. He briefly recounted his childhood in Iowa and the years of hard work before entering film studios. "I know the value of manual labor. Not everyone can make things like this." Sam handed him the gasoline, and Duke tried on the gray hat. He looked in his old mirror, tilting his head back and forth. The hat fit perfectly, casting shade over his square face. "It fits perfectly, as if it were made for me. How much?" $15, sir," Sam said, his voice trembling. Duke pulled out his wallet and gave him $20. "Keep the extra for good luck. This hat will go with me on my way back to Hollywood." "Thank you, Sam." When Duke walked out wearing the hat, Sam stood still. It was his first sale in 2 weeks. Eleanor ran out from the back of the house, her eyes sparkling. "Is that really John Wayne?" Sam nodded, hugging his wife. He tried on the hat, and he liked it. 2 days later, a candid photo appeared in the Arizona Daily Star. John Wayne wearing Sam's ash-gray hat, standing next to a Ford station wagon, grinning broadly. The headline read, "The Duke and the Mysterious Handmade Hat from Route 66. Rumors spread like wildfire. More tourists stopped their cars. The next day, Sam sold 5 hats. Eleanor jumped for joy, hugging her husband in the workshop. "Duke has brought us good luck, Sam." Tommy and Lucy helped sort the hats and attach labels. The town of Cactus Springs became bustling. Mr. Higgins at the general store laughed loudly. "Sam, you're finally famous." But not everything was smooth sailing. In Tucson, the owner of the large hat shop, a businessman named Harlan, became jealous. He spread rumors. The Whitaker hat is of poor quality, just a scam using Wayne's name. Some old customers canceled their orders. Tommy was teased by his friends. "Your dad sells hats to celebrities. Why are you still poor?" Sam sat alone in the workshop late at night, smoking. He was torn. Could fleeting fame save his family? Eleanor's cough worsened from working extra night shifts at the diner. "I don't want pity," Sam whispered. "I want to stand on my own 2 feet." Even so, every morning, Sam got up early and selected the best wool. He believed that quality would prevail. At the Warner Brothers studios in Los Angeles, John Wayne walked onto the set wearing Sam's gray hat. Director Howard Hawks looked at him, nodding. "Duke, that new hat suits the role perfectly. Really masculine, just like you." Duke laughed. From a guy in Arizona, truly quality. News spread quickly in the film industry. Dean Martin called from Las Vegas. "Duke, where's your hat?" "I'm at the Sands Hotel. I want one for the performance." Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra also inquired. Sam received his first call from a set assistant, an order for 10 hats for the new film crew. Sam and Eleanor worked through the night. The oil lamp cast shadows on the table. Tommy learned how to carve insignia. "I'll help you, Dad," he said. Eleanor, despite her fatigue, made coffee and told jokes to encourage them. "This is an opportunity, but it's also pressure," Sam told his wife. "If we mess it up, Duke's reputation will be damaged." The first hats were carefully packed and sent by truck. Sam watched as the truck disappeared down Route 66, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. That's when the real journey began. In the days following the Hollywood order, Whitaker Hat's workshop seemed to awaken from its long slumber. Oil lamps and yellowish electric bulbs burned all night in the old wooden workshop. Sam Whitaker bent his head, concentrating at his workbench, his rough hand skillfully carving the eagle emblem onto the brim of the hats. Beside him, Eleanor, despite her tired eyes from a recurring asthma attack, patiently sewed the soft goatskin lining. Tommy, his 16-year-old son, learned how to dye sheep's wool with natural herbs, while little Lucy sat drawing labels for each hat. 10 hats for Duke's film crew, Sam murmured, his voice a mixture of pride and anxiety. They have to be perfect. We can't let him down. The order was a huge opportunity, but it also brought countless difficulties. The sudden rains in the Arizona desert made the roads muddy, and the supply of quality sheep's wool from Texas was delayed. Sam had to drive his old truck over 200 miles to get supplies, leaving Eleanor alone to care for their 2 children and the small diner. Along the way, the rain poured down. The truck skidded on the red dirt road. Sam gripped the steering wheel tightly, his thoughts of his family. When he got home, he found Eleanor lying in bed, wheezing. The local doctor had arrived, shaking his head. She needs rest. She can't do any strenuous work. Her asthma is getting worse because of the desert dust and fatigue. Sam sat beside his wife, holding her hand tightly. You rest. Tommy and I can manage. But Tommy was torn. He dreamed of going to university to study design, but now wanted to drop out to help his father. I don't want to see you and Mom struggling anymore, Tommy said during a meager dinner of bread and bean soup. Lucy hugged her brother, her eyes glistening with tears. Sam felt the weight on his shoulders. Late at night, he sat alone on the porch, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette, watching the hats hanging in the moonlight. I don't want Duke's pity. I want to be self-reliant. If I mess this order, everything will go back to square zero. A fierce internal conflict raged within him, the joy of Hollywood attention mixed with the fear of losing everything. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, John Wayne received his first package. He opened it and tried on the new hat in his dressing room mirror. Perfect, Duke nodded. He sent a short, handwritten note to Sam. Sam, your hat isn't just for sun protection. It carries the spirit of a true craftsman. Keep going, buddy. That letter warmed Sam's heart, but the challenge still lay ahead. One bright, sunny afternoon 2 weeks later, the sound of a car engine echoed on Route 66. The familiar Ford station wagon stopped in front of the hat factory. John Wayne stepped out, tall and imposing, wearing a plaid shirt and Sam's very same ash-gray hat. A wide smile spread across his square face. Sam, Eleanor, I stopped by on my recent hunting trip, Duke called out, his deep, warm voice resonating. Sam ran out, his hands still sticky with hat glue, his eyes wide with surprise. Mr. Wayne, Duke, you actually came? Duke laughed heartily, patting Sam on the shoulder. I couldn't just send a letter. I had to see your factory. He entered the factory, examining each hat and inquiring about the work process. Then Duke rolled up his sleeves and sat down at a table to help Sam carve insignia. I did all sorts of jobs before I got into film. Manual labor is something I'll never forget. Eleanor brought out coffee and homemade cookies. Duke played with Tommy and Lucy, telling funny stories from the film set about horseback riding accidents and nights filming in the desert rain. Life isn't always smooth sailing, kids. I've been rejected hundreds of times, but the important thing is to get up and keep going. Sam confided in him about his difficulties. Eleanor's illness, money, and rumors from Harlan. Duke listened attentively, nodding. I know Harlan. That businessman is very jealous. Don't let him sway you. Your hats are genuine. I'll wear one in my next film. That afternoon, Duke bought several more hats, paying generously in cash, and took a picture with Sam's family in front of the factory. The picture was published in the local newspaper, causing sales to skyrocket. Tourists flocked to Cactus Springs like a river. Sam watched Duke drive away, his heart filled with gratitude. A famous person like him taking the time for us. It wasn't just a visit, it was a spark of hope. Cactus Springs was no longer the sleepy town along Route 66. The Whitaker hat sign gleamed in the sun, and tourists stopped constantly. Sam hired 2 young apprentices from Tucson and expanded his workshop by adding a new wooden shed. Eleanor, her health improving thanks to rest and medication, managed the sales and diner. Tommy proudly stood behind the counter showing each hat to the customers. This one's for the desert. The wide brim provides perfect sun protection, the boy told a family traveling from California. The town was bustling. Mr. Higgins's grocery store added ice cream and soft drinks to its menu. Eleanor's diner was crowded, filled with laughter and chatter. Sam hadn't forgotten his roots. He gave away his hats for free to war veterans and poor farmers in the area. These hats are for real working people, he said. Duke wrote regularly, advising Sam, "True success isn't about money, it's about helping others." Sam followed that advice, organizing free hat-making classes on weekends for local youth. Tommy led the way, teaching carving techniques. But the change also brought new pressures. Orders from Hollywood increased, requiring Sam to manage things better. He bought machinery to assist, but kept the main work done by hand. Eleanor hugged her husband one night. "We're building something big, Sam. Thanks to Duke, but also thanks to you." Cactus Springs became a popular stop on Route 66, with the story of the hat maker and the Duke retold on every bus ride. Harlan, the owner of a large hat shop in Tucson, didn't sit idly by. He sued Sam for copying the design and spreading malicious rumors in the local press. "The Whitaker hat is just a copycat thanks to Wayne's name," Harlan declared in an interview. Sam received a court summons, his heart heavy. "Everything's about to be lost," he told Eleanor. The family gathered around the dinner table, Tommy gripping his father's hand. "We'll fight." Duke learned the news from friends. He flew from Los Angeles to Tucson to testify at the trial. In the courtroom, the tall Duke stood up, his deep voice recounting the story. "I happened to stop my car and saw the genuine quality from Sam's hands. No copying whatsoever. This is a genuine creation." The judge dismissed the case. Harlan bowed his head in defeat. Sam walked out of the courtroom, embracing his wife and children. "We won." From then on, Sam learned how to protect his brand. He created the Duke Series line of hats with John Wayne's permission, each featuring a special insignia and embossed signature. Sales exploded like never before. But the challenges forged Sam stronger. He understood that success isn't about avoiding envy, but about overcoming it with integrity. After their victory in the Tucson court, the Whitaker household was filled with a mixture of joy and weariness. The hat workshop was now larger with its newly constructed shed, the Arizona sunlight streaming through the clean glass windows, reflecting off the neatly hung Duke Series hats. Sam Whitaker stood in the middle of the workshop, wiping sweat from his brow, watching Eleanor beaming at the sales counter. Her asthma had significantly improved thanks to better medication and less strenuous work. Tommy, now taller, confidently instructed the two new workers on how to sew the leather lining, while Lucy scurried around bringing water to everyone. "We should have a thank you party," Eleanor suggested one evening when the family gathered around the table for a rare, hearty meal of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. Duke changed everything, not just money, but hope. Sam nodded, his heart warming. "I'll write him an invitation. Even with all the filming, he might drop by." The letter was sent by special truck. Just a week later, a small plane landed at the dusty airfield near Cactus Springs. John Wayne stepped out tall, wearing a leather jacket and his familiar ash-gray hat. He brought gifts, new bicycles for Tommy and Lucy, a quality supply of medicine for Eleanor, and a case of fine California wine. "Duke!" Sam ran out and hugged him in a typical Western style, a strong pat on the shoulder. "You didn't have to come. We just wanted to thank you." Duke laughed loudly, his deep, warm voice echoing across the desert. "Sam, we're friends now. I like places like Cactus Springs better than glamorous Los Angeles. People here are down to earth." The party took place on the factory porch, under lanterns and a bonfire. The town flocked in. Mr. Higgins, a regular diner customer, a veteran who had been given a free hat. Duke played his old guitar, sang Western folk songs, and told stories about his family, about lessons learned from his parents, about always helping others without expecting anything in return. "I was a poor boy in Iowa. A small act can change a life," he said, his eyes fixed on Sam. Tommy sat beside Duke, his eyes sparkling. "I want to follow in Dad's footsteps in hat making and design hats for film sets." Duke patted his shoulder. "Son, study hard, but a craft is something no one can take away." Eleanor hugged her husband in the corner of the porch, tears streaming down her face. "Sam, I've never seen you so happy." Sam whispered, "Thanks to Duke, and thanks to you for persevering when I wanted to give up." That night, as Duke drove away, Sam watched the taillights disappear down Route 66. His gratitude wasn't just for a famous person, but for the good spirit he brought. The Whitaker family was truly closer than ever. The invitation to the premiere of John Wayne's new film in Los Angeles was the biggest surprise. Sam, wearing his newly tailored suit for the first time, held Eleanor's hand tightly as they stepped out of the taxi in front of the neon-lit theater. A red carpet stretched out, reporters flashing their cameras incessantly. Duke stood waiting for them, his Whitaker hat standing out among the crowd of stars. "Sam, Eleanor, welcome to Hollywood," Duke shouted, embracing them both. He led them down the red carpet, introducing them to Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Frank Sinatra, his Rat Pack friends. "This is the guy who made this hat. Real quality." Cameras whizzed by. Reporters swarmed Sam. "Mr. Whitaker, how has this hat changed your life?" Sam, his voice trembling but sincere, briefly recounted his journey from a deserted workshop to a Hollywood order. Duke didn't just buy the hat, he bought faith in manual labor. In the theater, when Duke's character appeared on screen with his ash-gray hat, the audience applauded loudly. Eleanor squeezed her husband's hand. "Look, our hat on the big screen." After the screening, there was a lavish dinner. Duke pulled Sam aside onto the balcony for a private conversation. "Hollywood is glamorous but lonely, Sam. What you have at Cactus Springs, your family, your little workshop, is the most precious thing. Don't let the spotlight dim it." The next morning, newspapers were full of articles. John Wayne and the anonymous hat maker from Route 66. Orders poured in from other studios. Sam returned to Arizona with a suitcase full of ideas, his heart overflowing with inspiration. Tommy met his father at the small airport, his eyes shining. "Dad, I've designed a new hat based on Duke's film." The Hollywood spotlight didn't change Sam. Instead, it strengthened his belief in his roots. A year later, Whitaker Hats was no longer a small workshop along Route 66. New branches opened in Tucson and a small shop in Los Angeles near the studio. Sam hired more workers, including local youths from the free hat-making class. Tommy, now 17, took charge of design, creating a more youthful line of hats with modern details, but still retaining the Western spirit. Duke continued his support. He wore Sam's hats in many of the following films, making the Duke series a hot brand. Tourists from all over flocked to Cactus Springs, buying hats, eating at Eleanor's diner, and listening to stories of the hat maker and the Duke. The town flourished. Roads were repaired, a new school was built, and a small museum dedicated to the craft was established. Sam drove along Route 66, stopping to give hats to truck drivers and farmers. "This isn't for sale. It's for sharing," he said. Eleanor managed the finances, ensuring a portion of the profits went to a fund supporting needy families. Lucy grew up with a love for painting hats, dreaming of becoming an artist. One day, Dean Martin visited the workshop during a tour. "Duke told me so much about you. Now I want hats for the whole band." Sammy Davis Jr. also placed an order. The legacy wasn't just hats, but an inspiring story for many other artisans across Arizona and Texas, craftspeople who began to believe that quality and kindness would find their way. Sam stood on the hill overlooking the workshop, the desert wind blowing through. From forgotten hats to here, all thanks to a chance encounter. Duke sent a letter. "Sam, your legacy will live longer than any of my films." In 1960, under the clear Arizona sky, Sam Whitaker stood before his large workshop, now bearing the gleaming sign, "Whitaker Hats, handmade with heart." His family was gathered around. Eleanor, healthy and with her hair neatly tied up, smiled gently. Tommy in his college uniform, Lucy painting on the porch. The newest hats were being packed and shipped out. John Wayne visited again, driving his old Ford. The two men sat on the porch, sipping black coffee and gazing at the vast desert. "Sam, do you remember the day I ran out of gas? It was just a hat, but it carried everything," Duke said, his voice warm and deep. Sam nodded, his eyes glistening. "Duke, you didn't just test the hats. You tested my faith. Thanks to you, my family has a future. This town has come back to life, and I've learned that quiet kindness is stronger than any spotlight." Duke smiled, donning his old ash-gray hat, now an icon. "That's life, buddy. A small act can change everything forever." As Duke drove away on Route 66, the sunset painted the desert red. Sam hugged his wife and children. The story of nobody wanted to buy his handmade hats was no longer a sad tale, but a heartwarming legend passed down through generations. Everything had changed. Not just businesses, but people's hearts. And in the Arizona desert, handmade hats continue to tell the story of kindness and perseverance.